Hi Pisces, I'm EllaAradia and welcome to your July 2026 Psychic Tarot reading. This reading is for my Pisces water signs, where we'll be exploring the overall energy and themes for the month ahead, as well as taking a deeper dive into how these might be playing out for you in your life. This is a general reading, so it's not going to resonate for all of you, but what I do find is there's always a shared theme that runs through the collective of all of you Pisces signs. So it may show up in different areas of your life in slightly different ways, but the theme is always the same. So take what feels aligned to you and just leave the rest. And before we jump in, a very big thank you to all of you who are supporting my channel by liking and subscribing. So if you enjoy this reading and you haven't already done that, please do. It helps the channel out a lot. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, and then you can get notified when the next videos are up. So Pisces, let's jump in. I always like to tune into the energies first, Pisces, before I start pulling any cards. I'm a psychic reader, so I always like to see what the universe shows me for you. I feel like this month is a little bit of a reality check for many of you. And what I'm seeing here is really quite extremes in, let's say, the intensity of, how this might be playing out. I see for some of you, there may be something you've been working towards. It could be a dream, a life goal, a project. Lots of, really amazing kind of creative ideas and, a lot of things in the works there. And for those of you that relates, I feel like this is going to be a month around, taking action, putting those ideas into practice, manifesting, and some lessons here I feel around really trusting yourself, trusting your abilities, trusting your path. And for others, I see something, almost on the other end of intensity, where I'm seeing illusions being shattered, dreams being broken. What I'm seeing is the image of, broken, shattered glass. And I feel for many of you, this is going to relate to love, to someone that you're either still connected with on some level, or something that has, recently, I feel, broken down, where I feel like it's got so bad and so unhealthy. And, whatever was kind of keeping you there, holding you there, perhaps in the hopes of things getting better, I feel has absolutely, been shattered. Whatever that dream was, whatever potential that you saw, it just feels like a really intense moment where it's got so bad that there's nothing else to do, I feel, but see the truth of a situation. So some of you, I feel, are, going through a very tough time right now. Your overall energies, we have the Four of Swords. Could be a moment for some of you to take a step back and definitely step away from anything that feels, for some of you, this isn't for all of you, unhealthy, abusive in some way, because I do feel, an energy of toxicity in this. And it is a moment to look after yourself, take some time out, step back, and give yourself a minute really to bring your energy back to yourself. This is an energy of, restoring yourself, healing, and just being in a place of, I feel, quietness and stillness. Because it feels like there's been a lot of noise, toxicity, quite challenging times, challenging energies around you, which I feel have, really taken away your peace and your happiness. And you know, it may not be a moment to kind of work it all out. It may just be a moment of looking after yourself, finding, you know, some kind of place of peace, some kind of point of peace inside of yourself, and stepping away from the noise, stepping away from drama, you know, whatever that might be, and just really looking after, you know, your emotional world, your happiness, your peace, protecting your peace. That's what I'm feeling. That's the thing that I'm feeling that you need to do right now. What lies in your recent past is the Hanged Man. Your current energies, we have the Five of Wands. This could be, you know, this toxic energy that I'm feeling. You know, this is an energy of conflict, of, you know, people competing against each other. Everybody's wanting to be heard. Everybody's wanting to, you know, get across their viewpoint in the image on the card here. So there's a lot of conflicting views. And it's the energy of competition, feeling like, you know, you have to fight for something, or just the energy of conflict around you with the person that you're dealing with here. Your feelings towards your situation, the Seven of Cups. That's a little bit what I was saying. You know, the Seven of Cups, it does speak of illusions. It also speaks of potential, of possibility. It's a card of options. But it's also where sometimes, you know, our judgment can be clouded by illusions. That's what the clouds represent in the background there. You know, each cup has something in it. Each cup has a potential. But some of the things in the cups, you know, are things which aren't even really real. So, you know, there is a big invitation here, you know, to see things clearly. You know, see the truth of a situation, and don't, you know, don't let your judgment be, you know, clouded by potentials or dreams, you know, in terms of somebody, you know, being connected with someone who you thought was perhaps going to be someone different in your life. You may have seen the potential in this person and what this could be. But it feels like there's a whole heap of other stuff going on here, because we've got the Five of Wands, which is conflict. Let's just look at your challenge, because I feel like I've got a couple of different groups of you here. One group where this relates to love, and another group of you, like I said at the beginning, where this is about trusting in your vision. And, you know, this is where you stand right now. You may have lots of different ideas, and you may be trying to decide, you know, which one to, you know, take an action on. But the danger here is, you know, taking no action is what I'm seeing. And with the Five of Wands, you know, as your current energies, you know, this can be people around you that may have been perhaps questioning what you're doing, your path. There could have been some energy of adversity around you, but all of it is actually helping you, I feel, to really trust your truth. And, you know, it does still feel like this may have been a bit of a challenge for you, but with the Hanged Man there, you know, it's all about kind of seeing things from a different perspective here, which in this case, I feel like that's about understanding why you've had some, you know, competing energies around you, or some energies of adversity, because actually, you know, it's something you have been pulling in to help you, you know, really stand in your own truth here, Pisces. And this is where you are right now, you know, looking at, you know, what do you take the next step towards? What do you take an action on? And of course, that needs to be the right thing that you choose. But the danger of this card is that all of these amazing ideas that you've been having, you know, just stay as ideas, and that they don't actually get executed. So in the challenge, we have the Knight of Pentacles. So this is in the challenge, which often represents pretty much no movement at all, because the Knight of Pentacles is, the slowest moving knight in the tarot. But there is movement, it's an energy of being committed to something and, continuing to show up, even if, the movement is slow, progression is slow. It's really about putting one foot in front of the other, but continuing to show up. So when I see that in the challenge, it has a little bit of a stuck energy. Whether that is, related to love and this connection that I was talking about earlier, there's some kind of decision that needs to be made, but it's going to involve letting go of any illusions here and seeing the truth. Because, that's where you need to make this decision from. The hidden influence, we have the Fool. So the hidden influence is usually an energy which is impacting a situation, which we may not be aware of. And to me, this feels like an invitation from the universe of, some kind of new beginning for you, a new path to walk. And the energies of the Fool are really about embracing the unknown sometimes, even if, we can't see the destination. It's about, moving into the future, taking those next steps with curiosity and an open heart. And it is about following your heart. But first of all, it's about listening to your heart. And a lot of the time, our heart always tells us the truth, but a lot of the time we don't want to hear it. And it is about, I feel, finding the courage to, really listen to, what your heart wants moving forwards in, making this next choice or decision. And in terms of love, listening to the truth in terms of perhaps what would a person who loves themselves do in this situation. And of course, to do that, it's going to involve, letting go of how you thought the story was going to end, and, who you thought they were going to be, who you thought you were going to be as a result of that. And, it can be very difficult sometimes when, especially when someone comes in strong and they say all the right things and you're in a relationship, it's moving really fast. But then after a while, things start to change as you get to know each other more. And I feel in this case, things have become toxic. And, like anything with two people in a connection, at some point, issues come up. And I feel like what has kind of started to surface with this person is, it's been a little bit one-sided. And I'm also kind of getting the impression, like, are they being completely honest with you? Because in a love reading, this usually represents feeling like you have to compete for somebody. So they may be someone that, is getting other attention, might be entertaining, other, conversations, flirtations, things like that, where you're feeling like, they're getting a lot of attention and you're having to compete for that person. And I do get the sense of you sort of really starting to see that maybe, you're not quite on the same page as this person. You're ready for commitment and working towards, a long-term connection here. But it feels to me that, things have, gotten quite toxic. There's been a lot of arguments. I feel like you're dealing with someone here who really isn't willing or ready to really look at their issues. I feel like they don't have the emotional maturity that, a long-term committed relationship takes. And you know, by the time it's kind of got to this point, I feel like you kind of fell in there and your heart's in there and you fell in love. But now, you know, there's a very, very different kind of story that I'm seeing here. And it feels like truths have been exposed, illusions. Oh, something just fell off the shelf then. That's what that noise was. I think it was a gecko. I don't think it was spirits or ghosts or anything like that. Anyway, gosh. That's thrown me off a little bit. So I just feel that I've got the cats here to look after me, don't worry. I just feel like, you know, illusions have been really shattered around who you really thought this person is. And it sometimes creates a little bit of, let's say, a cognitive dissonance, and it can make it very difficult to, you know, move on sometimes when something didn't turn out the way we were perhaps led to believe that it would, especially when you've kind of fallen in love and it's all kind of gone that far. It can be quite difficult to, you know, move on from that when the story isn't finishing in the way that, you know, you really thought it was. What's coming in for you is the Four of Pentacles. And this is someone who's holding on, and it could be you holding on too tightly. And we often hold on, you know, for various different reasons, but usually we hold on, you know, too strongly because of fear. And sometimes there is, you know, a fear to lose something, somebody that we've invested a lot in. And you see that with business all the time. There's a certain name for it. It's some kind of syndrome. I can't remember the actual name of it right now, but it's when, you know, things are falling apart, things are failing, but because someone's invested so much and so much time, you know, they really struggle to actually let that go. And that's what I'm feeling here for you, Pisces. And so, you know, it may be a moment to, I feel, you know, have the courage to just go within and face, you know, whatever the fears are around, you know, perhaps letting go of this connection, this person, because ultimately, you know, they're not showing up in the way that you need. They're not giving you what you really need and deserve in this. And even if you carry on, you're going to come to this point again, unless for some of you, it might be the case that at some point this person can really shift and can really be willing to change and be accountable and look at, you know, how they're showing up. That could be for some of you, but what I'm more strongly feeling is you're dealing with someone who isn't able to do that. And so you will find, even if you kind of sort things out and you restart again, I feel like you will end up at this point of conflict again with your person, and, you know, the same choice that needs to be made, the same fears that still need to be faced. So in your guidance, we have the Ten of Cups. I would say that as a guidance, this is about staying true to what you really deserve. You know, this is the kind of the happily ever after energy, you know, wishes granted, emotional fulfillment and happiness. But when you look at the cards that we have here, we have illusions and conflict and toxicity. And, you know, when I see that in the guidance card, I feel like this is about staying true to what you really want in love and what you really want and deserve in a partner, and not settling for anything less here. And you know, don't be afraid to, you know, move on from anybody who is kind of lesser than, you know, what you really want and deserve. In the outcome, we have the Hierophant. This is a card of commitment. And in a love reading, this represents, you know, building a connection with someone where you have shared values, shared beliefs, And through that, you build these strong foundations. And, you know, this is the kind of connection that stands the test of time. But it may involve, you know, going solo for a little bit, stepping into the unknown, embracing a new chapter, but doing that in a new version of yourself, which I do feel will lead you to what you really want in love. And for those of you that this relates to, you know, life goals and dreams, you know, this is, I feel, about trusting yourself, taking that leap of faith. And, you know, the only way to really accomplish, you know, what you want in life is to actually start taking steps. And again, you know, look at what is it that might be sort of holding you back from taking a step here. You know, working on any insecurities or fears of failure, fears of not being enough, anything like that. And, you know, if you can find the courage to do that and be in the energy, you know, of the Fool, which is, you know, just staying in alignment, you know, with your vision, taking action, and just trusting that the universe will line things up for you, because it is going to lead you ultimately to this 10 of Cups. And something that, you know, is going to be for the long term. With the Hierophant there, you know, that might be about getting guidance. You know, this is about a card of, you know, it's a card of faith. It's a counseling card. It's about learning from, you know, others that have, you know, walked a similar path before us. And doing that perhaps, you know, before we put our own kind of personal energy into, you know, onto something, into something. So Pisces, I'm going to leave that there. If this reading resonated, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, no matter what comes through in a reading, moving forwards, always trust what feels right for you. So thanks so much for being here, and I wish you a great month ahead.